Okay, so you think you know Elf on the Shelf, right? That little guy perched up there on the mantelpiece.
Watching. Always watching.
Uh-huh, yeah, exactly. But today, we're gonna go deeper, like way beyond just moving him around every night.
Way beyond.
We're diving deep into the whole Elf on the Shelf world, using the Wikipedia article as our guide, which, by the way, is a great starting point for anyone who really wants to get into it.
It really is amazing how this, simple children's book turned into this whole cultural phenomenon. Like we're talking millions of elves, TV specials.
Netflix deal.
Yeah, Netflix deal. But like you said, it's not all, sugar plums and candy.
Definitely not. Get ready for some twists and turns. We've got some serious marketing genius, a little bit of controversy, and
A touch of holiday dystopia, maybe.
oh yeah, I like that. A touch of holiday dystopia. Okay, so first things first, let's do a quick recap for anyone who maybe needs a refresher on the Elf on the Shelf origin story.
Okay, so the book came out in 2005, and it introduces these scout elves who basically they watch the kids during the day.
And then report back to Santa every night.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Every single night. And of course, the book plays up this whole magic angle. So the elves come to life at night, fly to the North Pole, and then magically reappear in a new spot by morning.
And then there's the no touch rule. Everyone knows that one. Touch the elf and bam, no more magic.
Gone.
But here's what it gets interesting. The book actually says that naming your elf gives it its magic.
It's so clever, right? It really makes the kids feel connected to the whole tradition.
Oh, absolutely. Genius marketing. But it's important to remember the book itself actually came from a family tradition, not some big marketing scheme.
Right, right.
But then it exploded, became a USA Today bestseller, and, I mean, this thing spawned a whole empire.
Oh, yeah. Over 150 licensed products, I think.
Something like that. It's crazy. And get this, 22.5 million elf dolls sold.
It's mind-boggling.
Mind-boggling is right. Okay, but all this success, well, it's led to some pretty interesting critiques, some positive, some not so much.
Definitely.
For example, The Atlantic, they called it a marketing juggernaut.
Which basically means
Basically, it's this massive, unstoppable force, all driven by, well, sales and profit.
And it's not just about the dolls themselves. It's selling this whole experience, a whole lifestyle even.
Yeah, like you got to keep up. And while some critics are saying that maybe the values it's pushing, maybe they're not the ones we want to be teaching our kids.
That's where things start to get a little complicated.
Definitely complicated.
For example, a lot of privacy experts are worried about the whole elf watching you thing. They're saying it normalizes surveillance for kids.
Like, hey, if the elf can watch me and report back to Santa, why can't the government watch me too?
Exactly.
There's actually a quote from a professor, Laura Pinto, and she says, if you grew up thinking it's cool for the elves to watch me and report back to Santa, well, then it's cool for, say, the government to watch me too.
Kind of makes you think.
Right, it definitely does. And this kind of ties into another criticism, the whole comparison to the Santa lie.
Yeah, that's a big one. So basically, some psychologists are saying that even though we tell kids about Santa with good intentions, when they find out the truth, it can damage their trust.
Trust in their parents, trust in, I don't know, grown-ups in general.
Right. And so with the elf on the shelf, some people are wondering if it's doing the same thing. Like, are we accidentally teaching kids that it's okay to be constantly watched and monitored, even if it's by this cute little elf?
It's a really interesting point.
And of course, some people argue that the elf encourages good behavior. But still, I think it's a valid point to consider. What are we really teaching kids here?
Exactly. And then there's the whole stress factor. Vox had a great article about how the elf on the shelf can be super stressful for both parents and kids.
Oh, absolutely. Kids are worried about being good all the time, and parents are up all night trying to come up with these crazy, elaborate elf setups.
It's like this unspoken competition, you see everyone's crazy elf pictures online, and suddenly just moving him to the lamp seems like, I don't know, lazy parenting or something.
Oh, for sure. And the Wikipedia article mentions parents making these elaborate scenes like toilet paper swings, elves taking bubble baths.
It's wild.
And you know the company knows this, right? They even started selling these idea kits for parents who are like running out of ideas.
Oh, yeah, the idea kits. Which is kind of ironic, right? Like, okay, you created this whole stressful tradition, and now you're going to profit off of our stress by selling us solutions to the problem you created.
It says a lot about how commercialized the holidays have become.
For sure. And speaking of commercialized, can we talk about the Elf on the Shelf media empire? It's not just books and dolls anymore. This thing has its own TV special, a whole Netflix
A
series.
Food Network show with Duff Goldman.
I know, it's wild. And there was that CBS animated special a few years back. The Washington Post basically called it a half-hour advertisement that wouldn't move the spirit.
Savage.
But hey, clearly their marketing is working. Because the Elf on the Shelf is everywhere.
Literally everywhere.
And if you really want to go all in, you can get a VIE resort package. Very important elf.
Of course.
You know, complete with all the elf-themed amenities you could ever dream of. It's crazy. But hey, gotta hand it to them. They know how to market a product.
Oh, absolutely.
And let's not forget about the business side of things. Forbes estimates that the Lumistella company, they're the ones who own the Elf on the Shelf. They make about $100 million every year.
100 million, wow.
Yeah, and the founders, Bell and Pitts, they're each worth about $50 million. So, you know, this simple family tradition has definitely turned into a massive moneymaker.
Quite a success story.
For sure. But it's not all about the money. The Elf on the Shelf has also become part of our online culture, thanks to memes. Remember that Elf on the Shelf rhyming meme from a few years back?
Oh yeah, Ash in the Trash.
That's the one. It started on Tumblr and then it just blew up. Went from gaming communities to celebrities, it was everywhere.
It's crazy how a simple image can take on a life of its own online.
Seriously. So we've covered a lot. The book, the tradition, the marketing, the media empire, the memes. I think it's safe to say that the Elf on the Shelf is a lot more than just a cute Christmas decoration.
Oh, definitely.
Yeah.
There's a lot more to unpack here.
There is, and that's exactly what we're going to do after the break. Stay tuned.
It really makes you think about how our relationship with this tradition has kind of, changed over time.
Yeah, like when it first came out, it was this cute, charming idea, a little elf bringing some extra magic to the holidays.
Simpler times.
Yeah, simpler times. But then it gave, well, I don't know, a little more intense maybe.
Intense is a good word for it.
Like the Elf on the Shelf practically became a competitive sport for parents.
Oh, yeah, especially with social media.
Right. Instead of it just moving the elf each night, it's like, parents are creating these elaborate scenes, building props, documenting it all online.
Its whole performance.
It is. And I think that's where some of the stress comes from, right? Like this pressure to come up with crazier and crazier elf antics every single night.
Especially for busy parents, who are already dealing with all the other holiday stuff.
Exactly. It's like one more thing on that to-do list. Instead of bringing joy, it just adds to the stress.
And let's not forget the financial aspect. All those props and accessories can really add up.
Yeah, that's a good point. Not everyone can afford to keep their elf decked out in the latest elf gear. And that can lead to, people feeling like they're not doing enough.
Or pressured to spend money they don't have. It's almost like the Elf on the Shelf has become this weird status symbol.
A status symbol. That's crazy. It's like we've lost sight of the simple joy of it all. Instead of focusing on genuine holiday memories, it's become this consumerist frenzy.
Yeah, exactly. Buy more stuff. It really makes you wonder what kind of message that sends to kids,
Yeah, are we teaching them that the holidays are all about, elaborate displays and buying things? Instead of spending time with family, it's a little worrying.
Definitely something to think about. I think the most important thing for parents is to really be mindful of the values they're promoting, especially during the holidays. It should be about kindness and generosity and spending time together.
Right, those are the things that really matter.
Exactly. The elf is fun, but it shouldn't overshadow those core values.
So how do parents strike that balance then? How can they enjoy the elf tradition without getting caught up in all that pressure and consumerism?
I think communication is key. Talk to your kids about the real meaning of the holidays. When it comes to the elf, keep it simple. Your elf doesn't have to be rappelling down the Christmas tree or hosting a miniature snowball fight.
Right. It doesn't have to be a Hollywood production.
Exactly. A little creativity and a touch of magic are more than enough.
I love that. And we shouldn't underestimate kids, They're way more perceptive than we give them credit for. They pick up on our stress. So if we're approaching the Elf on the Shelf as this, chore or a competition, that's what they're going to internalize.
Oh, absolutely. We have to model healthy attitudes towards holiday traditions. If we're stressed out, our kids are going to be stressed out.
Yeah, for sure. Instead of that, let's show them that the holidays can be about, joy, connection, celebration, without all the pressure of these crazy elf shenanigans.
Exactly. I think it's also important to remember that it's okay to simplify things or even opt out completely. If the elf on the shelf is starting to feel like more of a burden than a blessing.
I think that's a great point. The holidays should be meaningful and enjoyable for everyone involved.
And whether or not the elf on the shelf is a part of that, well, that's a personal decision.
Absolutely. I mean, let's not forget, for a lot of families, the elf on the shelf is a really beloved tradition. It brings joy, excitement, it adds to the magic of the holidays.
Yeah, it's true. And for a lot of kids, it's just a fun way to, you know, engage with the countdown to Christmas.
Right. And it can spark creativity and imagination, syncing up with new hiding places, coming up with scenarios for the elf. It can be a really fun challenge for parents and kids to do together. It becomes this shared activity, a way to bond.
Totally. It can be a great opportunity for collaborative storytelling and bonding. And let's be honest, some of the elf setups people create are seriously impressive.
Yeah, I've seen some amazing stuff online. People get really into it. And if it's something that brings them joy, who are we to judge, right?
Right. The key is finding a balance that works for your family. If you're enjoying the elf on the shelf and it's adding to the magic of your holidays, then go for it. Embrace it. But if it's starting to feel like an obligation or a source of stress, then simplify things or just opt out altogether.
I think that's a great way to put it. At the end of the day, the holidays should be about making memories, not stressing over elf antics.
Couldn't agree more.
So before we wrap things up, I wanted to bring up one final point about the elf on the shelf. This whole idea of the elf reporting back to Santa. On the one hand, it's a fun way to encourage good behavior, but what happens when kids start to question it? When they realize that maybe the elf isn't actually flying back to the North Pole every night?
Hmm. That's an interesting point. It could lead to some, disillusionment, maybe even a sense of betrayal when they discover the truth.
Right. Imagine being a kid who's been like meticulously following the rules all December, totally convinced that this elf is watching you, and then you find out it's all been, well, a little made up.
It can really shake their whole belief system.
Exactly. It makes you think about trust. Trust in parents, in grown-ups.
Yeah, and not just parents, trust in authority figures, even trust in the magic of the
Oh, yeah,
holidays.
exactly. And this kind of brings us back to that whole Santa life thing we talked about earlier. The idea that, well, Santa's not real, but we tell kids he is.
Yeah, and there are a lot of different opinions on that.
Oh, yeah. Big debate.
Some people say it's harmless, it's just fun, it helps kids develop their imaginations. But others think it can really damage that trust when kids find out the truth.
Exactly. So is the elf on the shelf doing the same thing? Are we like messing with kids' heads by making them believe in this magical elf who reports back to Santa?
It's a really tough question. I don't think there's an easy answer.
No, not at all. I mean, each family has to figure out what they're comfortable with, right? What feels right for them, for their values.
Absolutely. I think the most important thing is to be open and honest with kids.
Hmm.
Create an environment where they feel comfortable asking questions, even if those questions are tough.
Yeah, like don't shut them down. Encourage them to think for themselves.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Respect their intelligence. Let
Yeah.
them figure things out.
So to wrap up our elf on the shelf deep dive, I think it's safe to say this is way more than just some cute Christmas tradition.
Oh, for sure.
We've seen how it can bring joy and creativity and spark all kinds of conversations online.
Yeah, and all the memes.
Oh, yeah, all the memes. But we've also seen how it raises some really important questions, questions about consumerism, about surveillance, about the things we teach our kids.
And maybe even about the whole idea of truth and belief.
Exactly. It's a cultural phenomenon for sure, a reflection of like our values, our anxieties as parents in this crazy, ever-changing world.
I think you summed it up perfectly. It makes you think about how traditions evolve. How something that starts out simple can become something so much bigger and more complicated.
Absolutely. And ultimately, it's up to each family to decide how they want to engage with the elf on the shelf, recognizing both the good and, maybe some of the not so good aspects of it.
I think that's a great way to put it.
So as we wrap up this deep dive, we want to leave you with a question. How do you feel about the elf on the shelf? Is it harmless fun, a clever marketing ploy, or something even deeper than that? That's something to think about as you navigate the holiday season.
And as you create your own family traditions.
Yeah. Exactly. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into the world of the elf on the shelf. We'll see you next time.